Hello, my name is Kshal Aideron. I am running for CSM 20. I had a player reach out to me and ask me to answer this giant list of questions. There are some really good ones on here, and some of them even mirror the questions that I've been asking CSM candidates myself in interviews. So I thought that I would go ahead and make a video, that way everyone can benefit from my answers. Before we jump into it, I will say two things. One, I'm going to limit my answers to about 5 minutes each. Some of these I can go on for a very, very long time, and there are a lot of questions. Number two, I did rearrange the questions that I got into a better flow, mostly for my own knowledge and my own issues. So the things that have the most expertise in are at top, and it kind of goes down. It's not really fair because some of them I just kind of group together because they go better together that way and kind of stay in the flow of the answers instead of jumping around. So for the player that sent this to me, sorry if you're using this to put into a spreadsheet. I will have the chapters in my video. So let's get into it. Question number 1. Well, not really a question. This is the candidate motivation and representation. So, as an EVE player involved in many activities, mining, hauling, exploration, D&D sites, missions, NullSec fleets, events, community leadership, and wormhole operations, why do you believe you are the best candidate to represent me and my community? How would you ensure fair advocacy of all EVE players, not just your areas of expertise? What motivates you to run for the CSM, and why do you play EVE? Okay, so, at this point in my career, I've been playing 5.5 years. It'll be 6 in the end of January. I have done, or my community has done, everything except for go out into NullSec to get SOV. We are in HighSec, we are in LowSec. We go out and visit NullSec, although I have a lot of community members that live in NullSec. We are also in wormholes. I have a wormhole community now, Wormlife, not just EVE rookies. So, it's safe to say that I have been exposed to pretty much everything that you can possibly do in the game at this point. And the way I look at it, my community represents everybody in the game. I have leadership. These are the 8 players that sit underneath me and help me run EVE rookies when I'm not around. I have leadership in Horde. I have leadership in Goons. I have leadership, I think, in Brave now? In PSI. So I have leadership everywhere. My FCs come from everywhere. I have FCs I know that are in initiative. All of the big blocks. The only one that we don't have represented right now is Frat. And I'm trying to get someone over from Frat just so we have, someone there. We have lots of wormhole representation. We have lots of LowSec representation at this point. Matter of fact, one of my FCs was poached by Fleet to go and run their new player corporation. So this is the type of thing that I'm doing, is I am getting players out into every bit of space to undock and either be content or provide content. So yeah, I don't represent any one player anymore. I don't represent just new players anymore. EVE rookies is like EVE teenagers at this point. We have, like I say, people everywhere. So yeah, if you want a CSM that does pretty much everything and has interest in seeing their players happy and productive and growing and learning, then I'm the CSM for you. New player accessibility and retention. Many new players lack the slow burn mindset and feel much of the gameplay they want is blocked by skill points or financial barriers. How would you address these challenges to make EVE more accessible, attract new players, and improve long-term relationship? To be honest, I believe that what I'm doing with EVE rookies and Wormlife is out there to improve long-term retention. There is this idea, this magic moment, these core memories that we create when we get together as players. So, as unpopular as it is among some people, when a ganker or someone out in low sec or null sec or a wormhole blows up that other person, that brand new player, and creates a dialogue, this is a core memory. This is a magic moment. This is where you talk to a lot of players, and I've been doing the Voices New Eden interviews, where players say, well, I got blown up, and then this person started talking to me, inviting me to join their corporation, and they've been in the game for 20 years. So, just essentially by getting people in fleet, I am working constantly to improve that long-term retention. Now, as far as a slow burn mindset, this is one thing that I think CCP needs to work on, and I have talked to them a little bit about it. There are no more sandbox games out there, or not many. I think RuneScape, maybe there's a few niche ones, even more niche than Eve. But we have the Warcraft generation that's coming in, and Warcraft, we all know, is instant satisfaction. So you go, you get killed, you respawn with all your stuff, you don't have to rebuild it, and then you go off and follow the blue, line to the next mission. Eve doesn't do that. Skills, I do think that we shouldn't give players all the skills. That's a bad idea. For longer than I have to really talk about it, I have seen players come and go that have or injected into a capital, and then they just left the game because there was nothing more. They had nothing to work for. They didn't find it fun anymore. So just giving them skills isn't the answer. What I do think is once you get to 5 in one of the faction's frigates, why not give them all the frigates, all 4 of them? Why do you have to skill into frigate 5 in the 3 other factions? You're not going to fly the other faction's frigates any different than the one that you just skilled into. Same thing with battleships and cruisers and destroyers and so on and so forth. Maybe once we get up into the capitals ships, we can talk about, making them skill into each thing to kind of draw it out. But for subcaps, come on. And this is also why I love the Society of Conscious Thought ships, like the Praxis, so much. Because you don't need those battleship skills to get them in, and you can get more players into those ships for, day 1, week 1, month 1 activities. Bridging the gap between new players and veteran players. How would you help new players bridge the gap with veterans, given the high skill point requirements for many popular ships and activities, and the significant financial advantages of older players that older players already hold? This is the great thing about Eve. A day 1 player can go out and blow up a 20-year-old or 20-year veteran. Time and time again, I put new players into frigates and destroyers, and we go out and destroy marauders and other battleships. We've almost gotten a carrier before. Almost. But it's all about, if someone goes and injects into a bigger ship, their characters have the skills. So the character's skill. But then you still have the soft skills. This is the player knowledge. This is the situational awareness. This is knowing how to pilot your ship. That stuff can't be bridged in any other way than undocking and playing the game. Full stop. There is no skill points that are going to give a player that information. So I can go and I can run circles in, my new players can run circles in more veteran players that don't know how, they've never learned how to pilot their ship. So there isn't as huge of a gap that people think between a day 1 player and a 20-year player outside of that soft knowledge. So we, as older players, need to find a way to teach those new players those skills. Again, it's nothing that you can actually give their characters in game to bridge that. So I have grouped expansion cadence and development focused, seasonal events, lore-driven non-seasonal events, and overhauling legacy content all together. And the reason that I've done this is because I sat on CSM 18 and I've gotten kind of behind that curtain look on how this all goes down. As far as the expansion cadence, CSM can give our input, but there is absolutely nothing we can do because this is a business decision that CCP has made. We can say we don't like it, or we like it, or, maybe you should slow down or speed up, but there is absolutely nothing that is in our control to make it any other way. That, once again, is a CCP decision. Now, me personally, I kind of liked how it was before they decided to go into the 2 expansions a year, where they're putting out a lot of little bits. But I think that they feel that they have more control on the overview and the milestones by doing it this way. It's just a design decision for a gaming company. As far as the seasonal events, I want to bring back the hunt. I want to bring back the hunt so bad. For those of you that don't know, the hunt was a Easter event, and you had to go out and hunt down NPC capsules, and then you got a key that you could go into the event site. Here's the thing about the NPC capsules. You had to descan them. That was the only way to find them. You couldn't find them with probes or anything else, or if you just kind of ran into them. But you'd have to descan. So just 2 months into the game, I became a master at descanning things down. I was so quick because I was trying to get as many of these keys as I could to sell them to other players. So yeah, every player that I knew that started around the hunt became really, really good at descan. And I find it a shame that they're not doing anything with some of these other events or creating really new events, because they are enjoyable. They're something that gets players to keep logging in. I see it from my own community. There is excitement around doing the events. Now, we only really started doing the events last year together. And yeah, it's been a phenomenal way of getting people together, especially the ones that you can do them in fleets. So yeah, I would like to see more frequency, but once again, the teams that work on these seasonal events are also working on an expansion thing. So it is a time and resource thing for CCP. Whether, they decide to do something different in a different cadence, I don't know. But once again, CSM, we don't really have control of that, unfortunately. As far as the lore-driven non-seasonal events, once again, I would love to see more of these. Eve Rookies dove in feet first and just, started putting out fleets for these events. And it was great seeing my FCs excited about them, that they were in there exploring. 2 of my leadership who went to FanFest actually got to go and participate in the Drifter council or whatever, where they got to do a little bit of role play and stuff like that. That was really awesome to see. So again, I absolutely would love to see more of this. And when I was on CSM 18, I always talked about these in-game events with CCP because I can see the players logging in, I can see the participation as the CEO of Eve Rookies, because I keep a lot of stats. But again, it's all about capacity, time and resources, and what, they can accomplish in their development cycle. And overhauling legacy content also falls into that, unfortunately. I talked to them about Cosmos, because at the time I had one of my FCs that was trying to do the Cosmos missions, and kept running up against the people that would farm the things that you needed to move on, and they were having a really rough time. I have talked to CCP extensively about the missions, and that they need overhauling. And I feel like CCP would like to put a little bit of time into it, but again, it's decisions. And I can go in there guns blazing saying, we have to do this. We have to focus on this. But if CCP already has what they want to do planned out for the next 4 years, all I can do is try to figure out what we're going to do, or what we can do within the time that we have that could help a little bit here and there. Those are things that CSM can always do, and the conversation is continuous. Toxicity and community conduct. In light of the recent player actions against Absolute Order, AO, do you think CCP should take a more active role in addressing toxicity within the game, including associated platforms like Discord and Reddit? How can CCP distinguish between in-game conflict and real-world harmful behavior such as racism, sexism, or homophobia? I think this player has been taking some of the questions out of my own interviews. Anyone who's been watching my interviews knows that I have a question on there directly about Absolute Order and the events from the summer. Anyone who knows about EVE Rookies knows that EVE Rookies and myself, well, especially myself, we are very passionate about our core values. And in our core values, we have absolutely zero tolerance to any type of toxic talk or gameplay. Now, when I say toxic gameplay, I'm not talking about ganking or anything like that, but where people are following and harassing other players or gatekeeping, those type of things, we absolutely do not condone and we do not do. Same thing with bringing real life stuff into the game, gamer words, we just don't do it. I do have a little story about that I would like to tell. This is probably a good time. The reason that we got to this core values is we were in a fleet and we were 5-6 of our community team leadership. We were dropping the R word pretty hard. R this, R that, and a few other, that's so gay type things. And I even feel icky, saying this at the moment, because it's just not the way that I have talked or act for many years. At the end of the fleet, we had a guy who, he's like, thank you for the fleet, but I won't be coming back. I have a autistic son, and we deal with this type of ableism day in and day out. I do not want to deal with it in my free time. So thank you, but no thank you. And that all made us take pause. We talked about it, and we realized that we don't need to act this way. We don't need to say these words, because they don't bring anything to the conversation. They don't bring anything to us. So we codified it into our core values, and we went on our way. I've been told many times over the last 4.5 years that we are too strict, that we have sticks up our bums, that it's never going to work out, people aren't going to enjoy being around us. Well, we're going on 4,600 people on our Discord. I think that we have more people that agree with us than them. So, yeah. Now, that was a little segue to why I'm going to say the things I'm going to say now. I do think that CCP should be taking a more active role in this type of toxicity in the game, and they do. They do take it seriously. I've had a lot of conversations about it when I was CSM 18, and the conversation's gone on. Matter of fact, even before that, before I even got into CSM, I've had conversations with them. I've been on the Women in Games panel, I think FanFest 2023, or no, 2024, where we talked about, being female or female identifying within the game and the type of hate and toxicity that we run into. This year, at FanFest 2025, I got to sit on a panel about toxicity in the community. And so they are taking it seriously. However, here's the caveat. They can really only police the things within their game. Just like I tell people within EVE Rookies, we can only police our little bit of space. I have control of what people say and do within Discord. If I find out that they're doing this on, they're passing casual racist memes, say, on another Discord, and I have proof, or I find out that they're doing it in game, I can kick them and ban them from Eve Rookies. But that is the extent of my control. I advocate and I tell players, if you see this type of behavior, this type of toxicity, say something, speak out. Don't tolerate it, but it's not necessarily having to be the hill that you die on either. Acknowledge it, tell the people around you that you don't like it, and leave. We can only control what we do. Now, as far as third-party platforms, if a group or the leadership of that group are taking part of different CCP initiatives, say partner, CSM, if they're using CCP IP, so, Eve Rookies, obviously being Eve Rookies type thing, if you're participating in FanFest, these type of things, I think that CCP could rule on it and enact bans or come down a little bit harder on it because you're using EVE Online CCP-owned IP, intellectual property. But at the end of the day, they can only control their little corner of the world. We can only control our little corners of the world. And this summer, the greater EVE community did step up and say enough is enough. And not only did they speak out about it, but they, went to war against Absolute Order. And I thought that was fantastic. A lot of people are mad at me because I didn't use Eve Rookies as a platform to go after Absolute Order. Matter of fact, I said we did not condone this type of behavior. I do not expect anyone participating in Eve Rookies to act like this. If Absolute Order is on our fleets, we expect these members to follow our core values. Only my leadership and my community team are held to a higher standard than our line members. So if I would have gotten an Absolute Order member within my direct team, they probably would have been given the ultimatum to leave Absolute Order or, have to leave our team. That was a hard conversation that we had with my leadership, and we've come to that conclusion. But all in all, Eve Rookies isn't the place for that. Now, I never said that my CSM campaign wasn't. So I am, very, very happy with the community that they have done what they've done. It saddens me that the community doesn't believe in it enough to stop it themselves. You had the rehab, that was the place where a lot of players came to do the MPSI parts of the eviction of Absolute Order. And there were people in there that were dropping the R word and other toxic things. Other people would say, please don't do it, and then they would get ignored or told, well, this is the way I am, live with it. This is called virtue signaling. So the people within the Discord, AO bad, Nazis bad, but then they turned around and they did lesser bad stuff because it's not Nazi, and it was kind of tolerated. So that saddened me. That saddened me quite a bit. And yeah, at the end of the day, I'm personally in the constant conversation with CCP on doing better and how we can do better and what we can do. But once again, we can only police all of our own little corners of the universe and ourselves. So I'm not going to ramble on anymore because that was definitely a Kshal ramble. Awoxing. How do you think CCP should handle or mitigate Awoxing, and are there ways to discourage it while preserving the social and strategic dynamics of the game? I'm going to assume that when we talk about Awoxing, we're talking about NullSec, where it actually matters. For those that you don't know, in faction warfare, if you go and kill your own militia, there isn't a whole lot of punishment. There's a little bit of standing loss. That's about it. Now, of course, there is Awoxing in other parts of the game. I think two big examples is there is a FC in my corporation who went out and did an MPSI fleet, and he got AWOXed by someone else in the same community. Now, whether it was an accident or it was planned by this other FC, I don't know. But, that type of thing is just real kind of shitty. And then, of course, we get AWOXed all the time on bomb. Well, I'm not going to say all the time, but there's been a frequent occasions where we've been AWOXed by Pandemic Horde out on Bomber's Bar fleets. So somebody from Pandemic Horde will come in, they will fly in their, blops or other friends' ships, and then they'll decloak our blops, and pretty soon all of the frigates are gone. You see just all the little bombers go pop, 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 and the only thing that's sitting there left is the recons and the T3Cs. So again, it's kind of like way to ruin the fun of 70 odd people. Well done. It is what it is. But we're going to go back to the low-sec Awoxing. I have not experienced this directly yet, but I do know that some of my faction warfare FCs who have taken out plexing fleets have, and it's a well-known problem in the faction warfare community. I do think that there needs to be something stiffer than just standings loss when you kill another militia member. I think maybe there could be some LP loss. Definitely a bigger standings hit. Maybe you turn flashy red for X amount of time. There really has to be something. And I do realize that people aren't going to be happy with what the solution is. One of the things I said about the faction's loss, someone told me, well, sometimes we have to AWOX someone in our fleet because they're being, idiots or whatever. Well, if you're going to have to do that and that's the action that you're going to take against that member, then I think that, you need to have a character in there that can take the loss and then go rebuild it. That's just part of the game. And it's for the better good of the game if you dealt with it that way. This is a delicate thing, and it really just depends on coding and what, other things that this will affect, the changes will affect. Because a lot of people think that if you, do something in this area, it won't affect that area. That's not true. You would be surprised what affects what. But on the other hand, you'd be surprised what doesn't affect anything else, and it's really easy. But this is something I had started talking about when I was still a CSM on CSM 18, and it is something that if I were to get on to the CSM that I would be talking about, because, yeah, my community is experiencing it. So, yeah, and it's not healthy for the game. Cenotaph, Ganking, and CONCORD. Regarding the current use of Cenotaphs to gank freighters in HighSec, their damage over time effect continues even after CONCORD destroys the Cenotaph, effectively making CONCORD irrelevant in these encounters. What changes would you suggest to ensure CONCORD remains effective in the 0.5 to 1 systems, while keeping Cenotaphs viable for the ganking playstyle? Okay, so I've had people within EVE Rookies come to me to talk to about this and want me to advocate to CCP that it sucks and it's wrong, and add whatever more bullet points that you like. Let me get this up here. Now, I decided before I answer this question to go and see how bad this really is, and I think you might be surprised. So here is a... Oh, never mind. You can't see it. There we go. So I went for this month and I found how many Cenotaph gankings there were in HighSec. So for the total in October, there's been 182. This is an average of 7.58 ganks a day. Okay? Meanwhile, everything else, and I took the Cenotaphs out of this number, is 1,190 total ganks. That's an average of 49.5 a day. When you look at it in this way, it sucks that some freighter lost their ship and their cargo, but it's not a huge issue yet. I do agree that it is becoming an issue, especially on the 10th of October, we had 31 total ganks. So, there are days where there's higher amount, but in all is having 6, 3, 5, 1, 0, 7 a day, a big deal in the grand scheme of things. That's what we have to ask ourselves. I am 100% sure that CCP is watching this and watching what's going on. I know 100% that the CSM have talked to CCP about this. They have raised the issue. So I am 100% confident that when the time comes, CCP will enact a change on this. And because I do have interest in HighSec, obviously, it is something that I've had my eye on since people started using Cenotaphs in this way. But I'm not panicking yet. And also going and looking at what is actually being ganked. There's a lot of what most likely was autopiloting ships and people who didn't have that situational awareness to make that transfer from point A to point C. Z. Yeah. So, yes, it's something that, I will likely raise to find out where CCP is on this issue. But it's not one that I'm like, hey, we got to make this change now. Haulers are dying in hordes, because you can see that haulers aren't dying in hordes. So, yeah, it's one of those things, right? It's all about the numbers. HighSec structure defense. What changes could help protect solo or small corp industrial players from constant HighSec structure bashing without forcing them to pay billions for unreliable defense deals? How can this be balanced to support smaller players while keeping the bashing playstyle intact? Many players enjoy slow-paced, small-scale industry and want a few structures of their own, but lack the power or the community to defend them. Okay. This has several layers. First, I am not a HighSec structure player. Not in giving war decks, not in defense. Luckily, we haven't had to do a whole lot in this arena yet. I have experienced it. This summer, Black Flag war decked one of the HighSec incursion structures that we take around with us, or a person takes around with us. We stood up about 80 ships to come out and defend the structure. Unfortunately, Black Flag, it's an N+1 game. So Black Flag came out with more. Plus, the disadvantage is the majority that showed up were not PvPers, and none of us really have done structure defense. So it was a very interesting experience. It was nice to experience it, even though we got slaughtered. But the mechanics suck. Now, with all of this being said, as far as the small corps or solo players, make friends. EVE is an MMO. It's meant to be played with other people. There are some things that are just not meant to be done as a small entity or a solo entity. Playing the structure defense game is one of them. I hate to say it. We have gotten friends. obviously, where we could get 80 people to come out and defend the structure of a public community, owned by a public community, make friends. Now, there is a caveat to this. In the HighSec war deck mechanics, I do think more can be done to make it worth it. Look, with Ganking, we have already put some restrictions or made it harder. We have forced gankers to start picking and choosing their targets. There are people that still go out for, the ventures, but it's not as cost effective. It lowers your standings, and pretty soon you're not able to tether, you're not able to fly ship within HighSec, and there's consequences to your actions. So I think this is going to come down to an adjustment of HighSec war mechanics. I don't have the answer for this, but personally, just slinging around possible solutions with some HighSec war deck groups and people that deal with this, something that could be done very, very easily is upping the cost. Right now it costs 100 mil, which I think is absolutely insane, because 100 mil is, nothing. It buys a loaf of bread in the EVE economy. So if we jack that up to a meaningful number, I think that could help. That you can't have concurrent wars, or maybe lower the number. I believe the number of wars you can have at once is 5. Maybe bring that down to 2. Now you're going to have to pick and choose. And maybe there's a few other little things that can be done so that instead of picking on the small structure owners or the newer structure owners, they're going to go for more high-value targets. Again, this is something that I would dearly love to talk to CCP about a little bit more, because I thought that the whole thing just sucked when we did it. And from talking to HighSec war deck communities, they do it because this is the boundaries that they operate in. Okay, I'm sure that there's some that like it and they don't want it to change. But for most, they want more meaningful fights. They want more meaningful content than people just like rolling over or you pay the ransom. Whatever. Okay, I'm sitting here, I'm laughing at the next one. The FOBs, the Forward Operation Bases, and Lancers. What are your thoughts on the removal of FOBs and Lancers from HighSec? Was the decision justified from a gameplay perspective, or was it an overreaction to player complaints? Put them back. Just put them the freak back. I'm mad. I'm actually mad about this. FOBs were something that we did in HighSec with newer players. The risk versus the reward was absolute crap, but we could put new players in Vexers and go out and do the content. And show them kind of what Bash is and deal with some Diamond Rats and all in all have some fleet fun. We know that there were groups that were actually doing these, and it wasn't just multi-boxers, because they would come to EVE Rookies and ask us how to do the FOBs, or if we could come and help them. So there was people, like, every other week asking about FOBs. So we took out a fleet activity from HighSec, put it in LowSec. LowSec isn't happy about it, because now it's just busy work having to clear them out. The risk versus reward of actually going and doing them in LowSec sucks. You need some pretty nifty ships in order to go and do these. And yeah, who wants to go out and take out a fleet of Lashaks or Ikatershas and get dropped on mid-fob fight. And yeah, instead of going and blowing up each other, they're now having to deal with fobs. So we have one less activity in HighSec, one activity they don't want in LowSec, and we're making HighSec safer. And then for the Lancers, it's just a rite of passage going and accidentally whacking on a rat that you shouldn't have whacked on. It teaches players that not everything needs to be fought. A little bit of situational awareness and what you can and can't take. Picking and choosing your battles, picking and choosing your fights. I think what I hate the most, the absolute most about taking the fobs and the Lancers out of HighSec was CCP's take on making HighSec safer. There are people that sit in rookie chat trying to convince people that HighSec is not safe. Every time someone is ganked, people come and say HighSec is not safe. We have worked on trying to get the message across in EVE Rookies that HighSec is not safe. And now we have this. I can keep going on and on and on, but I think that if CSM 19 had someone who truly sat in HighSec and truly worked with players that, either lived in HighSec or were just starting their journey in HighSec, if CCP would have told the CSM that this was happening, I probably would have been, yelling at the top of my lungs. Not really. But I would have been very sternly telling them why this is not a great idea. Because it wasn't. It really wasn't. Now, I have absolutely no idea if CCP actually told the CSM ahead of time about this, or if it was something that CCP just decided to do on their own, thinking that no one was going to have any objections, or what could it possibly hurt? So I don't know. I'm not privy to this information, but yeah, if someone would have told me from CCP that they're thinking about this, I would have given them all sorts of justifications on why this is not great. Yeah, I hate it. I just really hate it. Solo player content. Do you think the game could benefit from more true solo content designed for a single character rather than multi-boxing? If so, what types of activities or features would you like to see added to support solo players and make the experience more engaging? So if you would have asked me this question 4.5 years ago, even 5 years ago, I would have said that we need to get them into fleets. That fleet activity is the end-all be-all. However, with EVE Rookies, we literally have people from all walks of life. And I'm not talking about just all nationalities or living everywhere within the game. We also have people with all abilities. And something that I've learned is not everyone can be a people person and extrovert all the time. There are some people that will come to one fleet a month because that is all they can tolerate, and the rest of the time they want to just do abyssals, with them, themselves, and they, I guess. Me, myself, and I. That's all that they really want to do. But they push themselves to come to that one fleet a month. There are some people that only have 30 minutes during their lunch break, and they want to jump on and do something. There's some people who spend half their time doing solo stuff, some people half the time doing fleet stuff. And, sometimes, even me, I want to just go do something by myself. Whenever anyone sees me online, they want to fleet up with me, they want to talk to me on Discord, they want to do this, they want to do that, they want to ask me about my ideas of this thing. Sometimes I just want to go and play by myself. Go do something and be with myself in the silence of space. And there really isn't that many solo activities. You can go and you can mine. Me personally, I rather mine in HighSec in a Corvette with one civilian laser than sit there and... I just don't enjoy it. I can go explore. A little bit better. I can solo PvP. But then I'm playing with the other person. And sometimes I just do not want that interaction, especially after I kill them. I can go do abyssals, which I am not good at, I do not like. Sure, I can go do level 4 missions, or I can do DD sites or, ratting, but none of that really tickles my fancy. And some of it you really can't do in that 30-minute time. It still takes about 30 minutes to get all ready and get to where you want to go. So I would like to see more solo activities put into the game. But I don't want it to be in dead space like Abyssals. I do think whatever we put in should be in the greater game, and it should still be content for other people if they want to come and hunt them. I don't think it should be a 100% safe activity. As far as safety of, like, say, no one can come and attack you. I still think you have to descan. I still think you have to have that situational awareness, watch local, and all that stuff. But I do think that there should be some other activities that people can go do. What they are, I'm not exactly sure quite yet. I'm not the game designer. I'm not the game developer. So luckily, I don't have to come up with that part. All I have to do is suggest that we have a need for that solo content because of what I have learned from Eve Rookies. That is my job as CSM. So yes, I 100% support it. Yes, I would love to talk to CCP more about it and, see where we go with that. SOV Upgrades and Exploration. With the recent addition of SOV Upgrades, particularly the Exploration upgrade, do you think this undermines the core idea of exploration by promoting site farming, or does it serve as a valuable conflict driver? How would you address the effects these upgrades have on the explorer's profitability and gameplay in other regions? Unfortunately, I don't have SOV, and I don't have a huge opinion on this. When I was on CSM 18, that's when Equinox came out, and I learned a lot about, the solve mechanics and the upgrades that were coming out, or at that time. Of course, I wasn't privy to what has come out, or this exploration thing, or anything like that. I'm glad that there is more content coming out into the game for people in NullSec, but I don't have an opinion on any problems it may be causing at the moment. Now, I want to say before you think that, oh, she's not going to be an effective CSM for NullSec. Here's the thing about the CSM. There's 12 people that sit on this council. Thankfully, we all have our own expertise and perspectives. So I do not have to be an expert on this. What I need to do is I need to listen to everybody else. That way I can come up with an informed decision if I should be asked. But this is one of those things that I would probably let those with more expertise speak up on. And honestly, if a player brought this to me and, they're like, hey, we really don't like this mechanic, I would take it to the CSM who are part of Null and who may have a bigger opinion about this, and talk to them and see if we need to take it to CCP. That's how we operated in CSM 18, and I like that. Because it means that, I'm not stupid. I know about other mechanics, but I don't have to be the expert on it. Small Corps and NullSec. What ideas or changes would you suggest to help smaller corps or alliances establish and maintain a presence in NullSec without relying on major blocks or being quickly crushed by larger powers? I don't know. I honestly don't know. What I can tell you is during CSM 18, when some of this stuff came out, I did make it known that Eve Rookies will never go out and get SOV, because as a small group, the mechanics suck, and the existence of being a small group out there sucks. Eve Rookies is a partner of LinkNet, and I have seen them go out and get SOV twice now. The first time, they basically got evicted because they didn't want to be renters and all sorts of other things. They just couldn't hold SOV, and they didn't want to be beholden to big groups. And of course, the second time they kind of got... They had to work with absolute order in order to be out there, which is a whole nother can of worms that we're not going to get into. But what it boils down to is SOV for small groups absolutely sucks. And I do know, as with the mechanics as they are now, it is not conducive for small groups to go out and get SOV. I would not do it as a small community, even though Eve Rookies has almost 4,600 people, and I believe we are about the same size as Initiative now, and we're getting... No. With my two groups together, we would be about the size of Initiative, and with just one group, we would be about 2,000 less than Brave. I still wouldn't be able to get enough people to come out and get SOV and hold it. We would have to make deals with the big blocks in order to exist, probably become renters, and that's not fun. What's also not fun is having to put down, 500 million skyhooks and then manage them, because you're looking at the person who would have to manage them. It wouldn't be my leadership, it wouldn't be, regular players. And it has nothing to do about trust. It is shit work. I can't say it any other way. It is shit work. And I don't know if the mechanics have changed since Equinox, and it became a little bit better. I haven't been following it, but yeah, it isn't making me run out and say, "Yay, let's go get SOV." I don't know. I don't know what's going to have to happen. CCP is going to have to do something, and I guarantee whatever they're going to do, nobody on the CSM is going to be happy with it. But if it's going to be for the health of the game, then maybe they should go do it. And this is something that it's kind of like projection. I don't know if the CSM should have a decision on how this is handled, because then nobody can be called, this is in favor of this group, or it's in favor of this group, or you only advocated for your own group. If the CSM is taken out of that decision, then, it's neutral. It was CCP's decision. We can all hate CCP over it, and it's done. But that's really what it comes down to. My belief on that is something needs to be done, but I don't know what. And speaking of projection and mobility in NullSec. I have this question on my own interviews. Let's see if this is framed in a different way. Projection is a key issue. Oh, yes, it is. While owning space should provide travel benefits, the current scale of projection often disrupts other NullSec groups and even low-sec or faction warfare gameplay. How would you address projection to keep advantages for SOV owners while preventing instant low-effort responses across vast distances? This was a hot-button issue on CSM 18. During Summit, we have all sorts of meetings stacked up every day, and I can't remember what we got them to change, but we managed to drop one out so we could talk about projection. It was that important to CSM 18. And of course, at this time, we had Zarazak as part of the whole projection issue, which has thankfully gotten changed. But yeah, it was a really hot button issue. Now, here's the thing about me. I don't live in NullSec. I have my opinions on this, but I don't live in NullSec. I don't have SOV. As an MPSIer, a person that basically goes out and plays in NullSec and either provides content to the locals or, I go out and find content. I think long-range projection is absolutely insane. Let's take Horde, for example. They own 3 regions. There's an individual who we would see on one side of the region, and in Raptors, we would go 3 regions over and he would meet us on the other side. Nobody should be able to project that quickly with like 20 vargers. Yeah, it sucks. I think, personally, you should be able to defend your home system or, the systems around your headquarters. That, clear. But I think the farther that you go out, it should be harder to project. There should be a little bit more consequence. Now, again, I don't live out in Null. So I would probably, once again, defer more to the Null representatives on this issue. I was very happy to state my own view on it, that I don't see how someone should be able to get from point A to point Z faster than Raptors when I'm so far from their headquarter system. But I am not also going to suggest things that, just to suggest them. So I don't know if Ansiblix fatigue is a good thing to bring back. I don't know if giving them a timer like with blops, when you're blopsing around, jumping around, is a good idea. But what I do know is CSM 20 is not going to be done with this issue. And that it will be raised again, and if I were on CSM 20, I would be right among them raising it, because it is still not healthy. The changes that were made were stopgaps. Okay, I am so glad that when it's bubbled that I can actually fight on Ansiblix now as an MPSIer, but it doesn't fix the projection problem. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on it, and whoever gets on CSM 20 will be dealing with it. CSM Structure and Representation. If you had the opportunity to restructure the CSM, how would you approach it? For example, would you set limits to the number of seats per security band, reserve a minimum number of seats of certain areas of space or gameplay type, or implement other measures to ensure fair representation? How would you balance broad representation with effective decision-making? So, here's what I've been trying to get across to people when I do my interviews with other content creators and whatnot within my own community, and when talking to other CSM and people about the CSM. I really wish that everyone would stop looking at the CSM on where we live. If we enacted only X amount of seats per security band, I'd be screwed. I don't live anywhere. Okay, the majority of my stuff is in HighSec, but I'm not strictly a HighSecer. I'm not strictly a low-secer. I'm not a NullSecer, and I'm not strictly a wormholer. So where would you put me? Would I even get to run, even though I have all this experience with new players and community building and everything that I do in the game and all that I have to offer? I wouldn't be able to, because I'm restricted by where I live. Then I would have to choose a place to live, and I would hate this game, because that's why I got into MPSI in the first place. I didn't want to live somewhere, and I didn't want someone to tell me how to play my game. So, how would I restructure it? I don't know. I think this is more of a player issue than CCP issue. I think we have to start looking at the CSM as experts, subject matter experts, and vote that way. I wish that the big blocks who always get their representatives onto the CSM would look at it the same way as well. If I have no problem with, say, Ariel Wren getting onto the CSM, even though he lives in NullSec and he is from Initiative, because he is a subject matter expert in ESI. And as someone who uses third-party tools and who has a waitlist that depends on the ESI, as well as other tools that my community team have developed and depend on because of the paperwork I require, I want him there, even though he's NullSec. When you look at Angry Mustache, who I served on CSM 18 with, and who is running again for CSM 20, I enjoyed having him on, the CSM because the way he can dive into numbers and bring up charts and graphs and put everything into like visual context is absolutely amazing. Sure, he's Goonswarm, but he wasn't representing just Goonswarm. Oz would also be screwed. He lives in a wormhole, but he's the market guy. So we have to start thinking of CSM in this way and what we offer as our expertise. How we can restructure it to reflect this, I don't know. But, I would be happy to talk to CCP about it and bring up my ideas. I do believe that we actually had a meeting about it in CSM 18 at Summit. So the opportunity probably will come up. But yeah, I don't know how to make it fair while making sure that we have all the expertise that is needed onto the CSM. Because this kind of goes back to the FOBs and Lancers, right? If someone from HighSec who works with new players and HighSec groups were on the CSM for CSM 19, would CCP still have made this change? We don't know because there wasn't. So I guess when you go out to vote, think about the expertise of the person and not where they're from. You're going to see that even reflected on the ballots for Wormlife and Eve Rookies this year. Okay, botting and input broadcasting. Regarding issues like botting and input broadcasting, how would you suggest CCP adopt a faster and more proactive approach to detect, prevent, and penalize these behaviors while maintaining fairness for legitimate players? This is tough. The CSM, at least CSM 18, we got to talk to the security team, and we got to learn a little bit more than, or see a little bit more than they gave away during their FanFest presentations, I think in FanFest 2024 and 2023. Yeah, I think. Those were the two. You should be able to find them on YouTube. They're very interesting. So, I know, as a previous CSM, that CCP is doing everything they can to battle this. And I think the only way that they could... There's two ways that they could become faster and more proactive about it. One, get a bigger team. The CSM isn't going to be able to advocate for that, obviously. And two, start doing more automation. Maybe even incorporating AI in. Again, CSM, we're not going to be advocating for that. That's above our pay scale. My concern... So, making the team bigger, I have absolutely zero concerns on that. I only think that could be good if CCP could swing it. Using AI and automated tools, I'm afraid that more legitimate players are going to fall into it than currently do. Eve Rookies, we have players that have disabilities that force them to use accessibility devices in order to play. This could be anything from different equipment technology. So I have one of my leadership who has created himself a type of mouse that he calls a sling ring, where he can barely twitch a finger, but it's sensitive enough that it registers it as a click. Down to voice commands and some automation. Now, all this is accessibility tools. It's making the game accessible so they can play just as badly as the rest of us, as I like saying. Right now, I haven't heard of any players using any type of accessibility device, whether it be software or hardware, get caught into the input broadcasting and botting categories. I'm afraid that if we went with more automation and AI, that they would. And this is the same thing that the disability or the disabled community talks about with like Disney and the Disability Access Pass, which is a huge issue right now. Disney doesn't want people unfairly using this to skip lines, which is not, but that's another story. So they rather a huge community of disabled people not be able to get the accessibility needs they need because they don't want one person to abuse it. We kind of rather have that one person abuse it than, all these people not be able to use the accessibility. So I kind of view it the same way for Eve. If we let some botters and input broadcasters through in order so that people who love the game and want to play the game can play the game, I'd rather have that happen. And I do know, like say, again, CCP works very, very hard at it. It may not seem like it, but they really do. And at the end of the day, they're catching people. They are doing their job. We just need to do ours and report it when we see it and move on. Because at the end of the day, this isn't something that CSM really is going to be able to do a whole lot more about in the grand scheme of things. As far as getting faster and more proactive. We all know that Drake Idon managed to go and get some botters out of Pokvin. That type of thing is entirely different. But yeah, becoming better and faster, those are the two ways that it can happen. And again, it's above our pay grade. Unfinished ship lines. Several subcapital ship lines remain incomplete. How would you propose CCP finish these lines from frigates to battleships to ensure all ship classes are fully developed and balanced? I'm not that CSM. I use the ships that are out there, and I don't worry about what isn't out there. There are other people that will be on the CSM that care about this a lot. And this goes back to, I am one person out of 12. I do not need to have this accessibility. I do not need, sorry, we were talking about accessibility earlier. I do not need to have this, a passion for this type of thing. Now, if it comes up and there's a conversation about it, I definitely will have opinions, especially if it's going to be something that new players latch onto or possibly is going to be utilized by the HighSec community or, the different activities that my communities interact in. So I definitely will have an opinion on it, but I don't at the moment. And yeah, I don't have to because I'm 1 out of 12. And again, I am 100% confident that we're going to get a CSM who is into this type of thing on there, and they will be able to carry that on. Industry, mining, and resource gameplay. Mining, exploration, PI, and industry are the foundation of all their playstyles. Yes, true. How would you make these activities more enjoyable and address the impact of Metnox moon drills on HighSec and LowSec mining? Would you change the fact that wormholes only have R4 moons, and if so, how? There's a reason that I don't do any of this stuff. I don't find it fun. You sit there, you watch the little circle go around, Eventually you have to eject stuff, someone picks it up, and then you wash, rinse, repeat. And if you run the booster, you make sure you have enough boosts and you're good. Not the most engaging gameplay. Now, this goes back to solo play. I totally understand why people enjoy mining exploration, PI industry, because they can, zone out, they can go zen, they can relax, they can, whatever reason that they enjoy doing it, they can do it. And it is the backbone. I personally would find it probably more fun if there was more PvP involved. This is why I'm not advocating for this type of stuff, because I also know that there's a lot of people who would be angry for me or with me over this. So, in this case, and this is also one of those things, I don't have to be an expert in everything. When it comes up, because it will, stuff like this came up on CSM 18, and what I like doing is I go and start asking questions to my leadership that is into this type of stuff, and then covertly start, asking questions about stuff with the rest of my community and come up with an opinion on, is there any quality of life suggestions I can give? Is there anything that is a bottleneck or people absolutely hate? And then, I can take that to the CSM who are expert on this, and we can formulate it into something else. But again, this goes back to the unfinished ship lines. I'm one of 11. I don't have to be an expert on this. Remember that when you vote for people. They don't have to be an expert in everything. They don't have to know everything. They're one of 12. So, but you can absolutely be assured that I do have opinions on things. And I have ways that I can go and ask people without breaking my NDA. Because I have and I do. So that is my answer there. Okay, we are at the end. Finally, please summarize your platform in 7 words or fewer. Getting players to undock. There's 4. I want to see players come out of their stations and play the game. Whether that's getting them into a fleet, whether that's getting them to go do something solo, whether it's to go and explore New Eden. I want to work with CCP to find ways to reduce the bottlenecks, reduce the issues that gets people to undock, and to bring the quality of life things that will be like, oh wow, this makes it so much easier, I'm going to go do this. In my FanFest 2025 presentation, I talked about content and trying new things. So I'm going to give the same challenge here as I gave in my presentation. I challenge you to go out and do something new. Don't do the same thing that you have done time and time again. Don't go and spin a ship. Go and try something. Just try. Whether if you are a regular PvP player out in NullSec, go do it in LowSec. If you're a wormholer, I don't know, go try HighSec incursions. If you're an industry person who only stays in stations and creates things or hauls things in so they have the components, go out and mine. If you're a miner, I don't know, go try PvP. It's kind of a circle and a web. Try something new. And then come back to me and tell me why you liked it or why you didn't. And tell me what is keeping you from undocking next time. So that is my challenge to you. Thank you. I do hope that you vote for me. I hope that I was convincing enough. But if you don't want to vote for me, as I said before, look at all the CSM, look at our expertise, and vote for the 10 people who think is going to represent your play game the best. That is all I'm asking. Look at the expertise and vote for all 10 people, especially the all 10 people. It matters. Thank you, and fly safe.